All right. PED cycle guide part 3. This is going to be a deep dive into how to apply growth hormone into your protocol. A lot of you guys ask me a ton of questions about growth hormone. I get like a ton of questions in the DMs about it. A lot of you guys are currently taking growth hormone, and I genuinely believe this is one of the compounds that really took my bodybuilding to the next level. It's a major plateau buster, especially for guys that don't have the best genetics, put on a lot of muscle. It's that one compound that will help you truly achieve that bodybuilder look. The frame, the silhouette, the broad shoulders, the composition, everything. It really just ties your whole bodybuilding in together and allows you to break past genetic barriers. It's a really, really interesting topic. And I'm going to get into exactly how you guys can apply growth hormone into your protocol. And I'm going to break it down so simple for you guys. A lot of these videos that these creators make, and again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but they'll go really, really deep into the science, right? Which is great. You can really learn from that. The problem is you guys will watch these videos and it'll be like like a fucking scientific lecture about, growth hormone or like a compound like growth hormone or a steroid and the mechanisms of action. They'll do deep dives into studies. And then you'll finish watching the video and it'll be like, cool, but I still don't know how to use it. I still don't know how to apply it into my cycle, right? So I'm going to tell you exactly how you guys can apply it into your cycle. Just keep it so simple for you guys, not going to confuse you. But yeah, so like I said, growth hormone was a major plateau buster for me. And it was something that really, really helped in my own personal bodybuilding. This is me right here. This is right before I started growth hormone. This was just taking steroids only. And for a lot of you guys that have watched my content before, I took a lot of gear to build my physique to help with my bodybuilding. Um, you know, some of my cycles consist of 2,000 milligrams of gear, some upwards of 3,000 milligrams of gear, and and keep in mind these are also like fasted morning photos. That I sent to my coach at the time. So this is in like the rawest form, possible, right? Fasted in the morning before any food or water, and you can see the clear difference between just steroids only and steroids plus pharmacy grade growth hormone. So right here, this is about a year taking growth hormone. I took growth hormone for a very, very long time. And I was taking anywhere from 4 to 6 IUs of Serostim. Actually, it was both Serostim and Genotropin. I switched between the two. But you can see there's a clear, clear difference in the density, in the hardness, the fullness around my shoulders. Like, this is what gave me that bodybuilder frame, and those gains like literally stuck with me even after I stopped the growth hormone. So again, it was a major plateau buster for me. It did numbers for my bodybuilding. And I want to tell you guys exactly how this can help you and how you can apply it to your protocol. So down here, so let's take a look at this. So if you're considering growth hormone, you've likely reached a point where your muscle growth is plateaued. So like I said, growth hormone is a major plateau buster. Like has been taking gear for a long time, and it seems like the gain cycle after cycle has become slower and slower and slower, which is going to happen. You're eventually going to get diminishing returns from the gear that you take. Okay, um, if you're considering GH, you're likely in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, and natural GH production declines as you age. So a lot of you guys in that older age demographic, I mean, you don't have to be in this age demographic to take growth hormone, by the way. But if you're in that age demographic, you'll find your recovery ability between workouts starts to diminish. Your sleep might diminish a little bit. Your joint health and integrity might diminish. So you might find that your joints are more beat up after your workouts. And GH can really help with that. You want optimized recovery and sleep. Growth hormone will give you the best sleep of your life. And again, I'm going to get into all this in a little bit, but this is something you guys are looking for as well. You want a protocol that requires less AAS usage. So growth hormone has like literal synergy with the steroids that you put into your body. So if you use growth hormone, you can get away with using less anabolics. And using growth hormone, it doesn't have a lot of deleterious health effects. So you can actually afford to use a cycle that's, they'll give you the same effects as taking, something like 2,500 milligrams of gear, but you can take less and use the growth hormone to get the same effect, right? Or a better effect. And you simply just don't know how to use it. You don't know how to use it, when to use it, or what dose to take. So this guide is going to go really, really deep into that. So if you're already using GH and you're watching this video, you're likely to experience some side effects, or you at least have experienced a side effect. the infamous growth hormone carpal tunnel, like where your hands and fingers and your arms will like fall asleep, right? You might get some achiness. And usually what happened to me personally is, and you guys probably experience this too, if I like put my hand into a fist when I'm on growth hormone, sometimes like my fist will like lock up and it's like really hard to like move my hand back in place. That's an example of growth hormone, of carpal tunnel from growth hormone. Um, you're getting water retention, like excessive water retention, like holding a lot of water from the drug. You're getting tired all the time, and you don't know how to manage the high blood glucose, which can happen. Sometimes if you guys are really dialed in, you'll take your blood glucose a couple times a day, usually in the morning and in between meals. And you might find when you take GH, under normal circumstances, you wake up with like an 80 to 90 milligrams per deciliter blood glucose level. But as you take the GH and it starts to build up in your system, you might find you're waking up at 100, 110, 120 and reaching levels of insulin resistance. So this guide's going to go over how do we use GH, what dose do we take, and when do we take it. I'm going to tell you exactly how you can apply it into your protocol here. So I want to go into first my personal experience with growth hormone because I've used this a lot and I had a really, really good experience with it when I first started. So back in 2023, this was my first GH experience. So this is the cycle I was taking at the time. And this was like back then when I was like really dialed into the bodybuilding and doing like really, bodybuilder conducive cycles like this. This was like a typical cycle for me, by the way. So I would take, at the time when I was taking the GH, I was taking 900 milligrams of testosterone. I was taking 600 milligrams of equipoise, 600 milligrams of primobolan, 50 milligrams of Winstrol every day. Okay, so a pretty hefty cycle. And at the time, I was actually working with, and a lot of you guys are familiar with Dan Marquise, Dan the bodybuilder from Thailand. He was my mentor at the time. He was my coach. So he was guiding me through the GH process and how we were incorporating it. So again, this is a very typical cycle that I would take, but the difference here is I started applying growth hormone. So I started with buying the genotropin pens. You guys are familiar, like the pens. They come in like a long pen, almost looks like like one of those like wood glue pens or something, and you attach like the pen needle to it, and those are like the real pharmacy grade genotropin pens, the ones that give you at at a prescription. And I was taking 4 IUs. I was also taking 200 milligrams or micrograms of T4 thyroxine, which is a protocol that Dan had me on at the time. So that was the stack I was taking, and this is what I experienced. So these were the, I guess like the positives that I experienced when I first started it. So I experienced increased fullness and pumps within days of starting it. Like not like it, a lot of people think growth hormone takes a long time to work. Okay, yes, it takes a long time to work to actually build muscle tissue and build new muscle cells and have those muscle cells hypertrophy. That's a long-term effect, but the immediate effects is you'll notice your fullness is going to increase in a couple of days. And I always had a pump just walking around, like everywhere I'd go. I'd like brush my teeth and like my biceps would just like fucking like lock up because there's so much blood in there, right? So it's like I always had fullness and I always like was able to get a pump very easily. I instantly got better sleep and recovery. I felt more prepared and less beat up for my hard training. Because like you guys know, I train very fucking hard, and a lot of you guys do too. So I noticed when I started taking the GH, I was able to be less sore, like in less time after those workouts and recover better. So it increased my metabolic rate. I could eat more food and stay leaner. So one of the things that Dan had me doing, and keep in mind, when I finished this growth hormone cycle, which I'll get into a little bit, I was 203, almost 205 pounds. I think I weighed 205 at the end of the night. And my body composition was extremely favorable. Like I still had abs, still had vascularity, everything. And the last meal he had me eating on my training days was a burger and fries with a milkshake. And that was my last meal of the day on the days I was training. And my body was just my metabolism was so fucking ramped up. I was just burning through that food. It was insane. So it allowed me to maintain an overall leaner body fat, or overall lower body fat as I was gaining size, which is a really good benefit. Literally just taking the growth hormone will just make you leaner like that. Like just from taking the drug, you'll probably drop at least like a percentage in body composition, percentage of body fat. And it seemed like my weak muscle groups, like my chest, for example, if I was at a weak chest, they improved both in the gym and like in the gym performance with the chest movements, like the barbell bench and the dumbbell bench, and also with the actual like muscle itself. Like it seemed like it started catching up with the rest of my body. So some of the adverse effects I got was slow digestion. That was one of the major ones. And so a lot of you guys have been following me for a long time. If you scroll back way deeper into my content, it seemed like I had like a distended gut, but it wasn't fat. It was like, I still had like abs, still had a six pack, but the gut was like protruded a little bit. And that was because of slow digestion. So I was eating a lot of food at the time, and it slowed my digestion. And all that food was just pushing against my diaphragm and making my gut a little bit distended. That was one of the things I noticed. And that went away after I stopped the growth hormone too. My stomach became like a lot tighter. I got slight carpal tunnel, like I told you guys. So every time I would like squeeze my hands together, they would like, my fists would like almost lock up. It was like really interesting. I never got the like the numbness, but like that would happen with my fingers. And it was like it wasn't like terrible, but it was just like kind of like uncomfortable at times. And I would get excessively tired after eating carb meals. So for example, I remember this like specifically happening. I would eat a meal, like for example, like chicken and rice, and it would be like jasmine rice, so a very fast digesting carbohydrate. And if I just sat at the table without moving, I'd fall asleep. Like I'd get knocked out. Like I would just fucking, like I'd be like this, and I'd wake up like 5 minutes later, and like I'd forget like where I was. Like that was an insane effect. It was interesting, but it was also like kind of annoying at times, right? If I'm trying to like get up and do shit, and I'm just like tired after I eat, it was just kind of disruptive. And I got a lot of water retention too. So, and again, if you guys have been following me for a long time, you guys probably noticed like my face today looks like a lot like more sucked in. Like I should have like a jawline now. Okay. But if you scroll back really deep into my content, my face looked like a water balloon. That was because I didn't know how to control the water retention on the growth hormone. Okay. And I actually fixed the problem eventually down the road. But yeah, that was a big problem for me. I was very prone to the water retention. So the result of this, at the end of that GH cycle, after about a year, so I broke past a major growth plateau. I reached my all-time heaviest body weight of 203 pounds in the morning. Like I said, I was more towards 205 at the end of the day. So walking around well above 200 pounds, which is good. My weak body parts improved. So both in muscularity and strength, like I mentioned. So, my chest exercises got way stronger, and my chest developed and started catching up to the rest of my body. Like I've always had very dominant shoulders and a weak chest, but it seemed like my chest like broke past it, like a growth plateau, and started catching up with my shoulders. Um, and all the new muscle I gained on the GH stayed after I stopped. There was a permanent adaptation. Like for example, like I actually just recently started taking growth hormone again, like a couple of weeks ago, and I'd stopped the GH for like almost like 8 months, but it seemed like the frame and the amount of size I built on the GH was able to be maintained just from steroids, like just from testosterone. So again, really good effect, and the gains will stay once you build those new muscle cells and they solidify in hypertrophy. They're going to stay. Okay. So like I said before, and this is a major thing you guys need to understand, growth hormone is a major plateau buster. And this is how you truly achieve the bodybuilder look. Okay. Like I genuinely believe this, like without growth hormone, for like most people with just average genetics, you're never going to achieve that true bodybuilder look. It is what it is, Like I keep it super real for you guys. Like I know what goes into bodybuilding personally from my own experience and people I've talked to anecdotally and working with clients. I know growth hormone will do numbers for your bodybuilding. Okay. So I'm gonna take a sip of water, and then we're gonna go over the benefits of growth hormone. And I always have to carry this fucking thing with me when making these videos, because like every time I talk and I talk fast, it's like my mouth gets like fucking parched. But anyways, okay. Benefits of growth hormone. So this is going to allow you to build more muscle than your genetics allow. due to muscle cell hyperplasia. So muscle cell hyperplasia, and again, I'm not going to confuse you guys and go really deep into it, but just in simple terms, it's the formation of new muscle cells, right? So new muscle cells will form, and then and then hypertrophy is the building of muscle cells. So new muscle cells will form, and then you'll build those new muscle cells bigger. Okay. So this is how you break past genetic plateaus, because everybody is born with a certain amount of muscle cells, right? So without growth hormone, you're only going to reach a certain amount of growth. You're only going to reach a certain muscular size. But once you have new muscle cells and those new muscle cells grow, this is how you achieve new size, newfound size that breaks past genetic barriers. So it increases muscle fullness and pumps, and you will always have the pumped up look. Okay. So this is what I experienced personally, especially when I went up to like 6 IUs. I haven't gone above 6 IUs ever, but when I reached 6 IUs, it was like I would just walk around and my arms would always just be like, it would feel like I had just like hit like a couple sets of bicep curls and tricep push downs. Like that's what it would feel like. So so you'll have an increased metabolic rate and nutrient partitioning. So you'll be able to eat more food and stay leaner. So you'll have improved recovery in between training sessions. So you'll notice if you hit a muscle group, let's say without GH, it might take just arbitrary number like 6 days for that muscle to fully recover. Taking the GH, it might take 3 days to fully recover. So you can hit it harder with more volume on that day, or you can hit it more frequently throughout the week because you have that enhanced recovery. And the muscle's ready to be stimulated again. You'll have improved sleep quality. So you'll get deeper sleep and you'll be able to sleep longer. Usually when I tell people when they take GH is try to go to bed at least an hour earlier, because their body just needs that extra hour of sleep when you're on GH, because their body always wants to recover. So you have connective tissue healing and injury prevention. So when I was taking growth hormone, I never felt like my joints were going to break, and they never felt like achy or, like they always felt good and smooth when I was in the gym. Because I do a lot of barbell movements, like squats, bench presses, deadlifts, barbell rows, things that really, really tax the joints. And when I was taking GH, it was like I could go through those movements and I feel like I could just, like my knees were always feeling good, shoulders were always feeling good, elbows were feeling good. And if you guys have those pre-existing issues, you start taking them GH and they usually go away within a couple weeks. For example, one of my clients, Adam, he's in his 60s. When we started a growing phase, when we were doing our cruise period, he was dealing with some elbow tendonitis and some shoulder discomfort. And then we started our growing phase cycle. We started taking a low dose of GH, 4 IUs, and those issues just went away in a couple weeks. Pretty incredible. So it has a direct lipolysis or fat loss effect. So like I said before, you will be leaner by simply just being on GH. It has direct synergy with your steroids. So like I said before, using GH will require less of a need for AAS, right? Less of a need for anabolic steroids. So some potential side effects of GH that you guys should look out for. So like I said, carpal tunnel. So it's going to be dose dependent and variable on the individual. I have guys that will take 3 IUs of GH. Like I have guys I work with that will take 3 IUs of GH, and their like fingers and elbows and wrists will be like achy all the time, and their arms will fall asleep to the point where it's actually discomfortable and affecting their day to day. Versus I have guys that can take 8 IUs and be completely fine, right? So I was like kind of like mid range, like I got kind of the carpal tunnel in my hands, but it wasn't really that bad for me. But other guys get hit really, really hard with it. And I'm going to tell you guys how to mitigate all these in a little bit too. You might get some water retention. So I experienced the water retention. A lot of you guys will also experience the water retention. And this is going to happen because you're holding excessive sodium in the kidneys from taking the GH. And that's an issue that we can, resolve. And I'm going to tell you how to resolve that in a little bit. So you may have some higher blood glucose and potential lowering of insulin sensitivity. So this is why a lot of guys, when they take growth hormone, they might take something like metformin, or in this day and age, retatrutide, which is again, I'm going to tell you about the synergy between these two in a little bit. Or they might take some berberine or, actual like insulin, right, with the GH because of this issue. So slow digestion, which could cause some gut distension. I experienced this Some of you guys will experience this. Again, this is dose dependent, and this really starts to happen if you start to go above like 8 to 10 IUs. This is when it gets really bad. And this is why you see a lot of these pro bodybuilders on stage, when they start taking GH for multiple years, these guys are taking 10, 20 IUs of like pharma grade GH. So they'll have like a permanent adaptation where their gut will just always be out and their abs no longer look tight and it blows out their midsection. This is one of the main reasons it happens, combined with the high amounts of food they're eating too, but that's a whole nother topic. So you could potentially get worse REM sleep. And this really depends on the individual. So for example, I can take growth hormone about 2 hours before bed and I'll get great sleep. I've had some clients that will take the same dose of growth hormone, again, 2 hours before bed. It actually affects their sleep. They might sleep throughout the whole night, but their quality of deep sleep diminishes. So they still wake up really tired and not really feeling rested. And this can be remedied, again, just by dosing it earlier in the day or like in the morning before fasted cardio. Again, just kind of modulating when you take the growth hormone. So, I mean, you guys are probably looking at these side effects and they're like, and you guys are probably thinking, oh, these actually aren't that bad. And they're really not, right? So this is something I always like to say. It's like, all in all, like the side effects aren't that bad for the benefits it brings. Okay. And growth hormone is not going to affect your health markers really much at all. Like, for example, like steroids are going to affect like, your lipids, LDL, HDL, cholesterol, hematocrit, hemoglobin, kidney markers, liver enzymes. There's so many things that they can just screw up on blood work. Growth hormone doesn't do any of that. And this is why I was saying before, you can take growth hormone and afford to use less GH. It actually allows you to, run your cycle longer and have longevity with your gear and actually use less gear. So again, the side effects really aren't that bad. Like just half the time I say like fucking, if you're getting good gains, deal with it. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Okay. Anyways, so let's get into a couple of HGH applications, because obviously the reason why you guys are watching this, you guys are probably thinking, oh yeah, all this is great, but like I want to actually know how to use it. So I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm going to give you 5 different applications on how you can use growth hormone, because this is a multifaceted drug. It's really not just for bodybuilding, right? It's literally prescribed as like an HRT drug for like, for guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that are lacking in natural growth hormone production. So again, multifaceted. I'm going to tell you guys how you can apply it right now. So number 1, this is going to be the bulking phase application. Okay. So this is where I believe, if you're doing growth hormone for the first time, I do believe it should be used in a bulking context, just because of the massive benefits it can bring for like new muscle cell hyperplasia and hypertrophy, right? New muscle cells growing bigger and stronger to break past growth plateaus. So growth hormone really shines when paired with a caloric surplus, in my opinion. So a good dose for a bulking application would be anywhere from 4 IUs. I would say 4 IUs would be even a little bit too conservative. But again, I ran 4 IUs. I felt great, but it depends on the type of GH you use, how strong it is, how potent it is. Again, I'll go into that in a little bit. But 4 IUs to 18 IUs. And I cap it off at 18 because, like growth hormone can break the bank to some extent. So, if you're taking upwards of like 20, you're not going to feel super great on 20 anyways. So just keep that in mind. You're going to feel tired all the time and, kind of lethargic. But yeah, like 18 would be like this is like if you're really trying to get massive and break past a huge growth plateau. Like we're talking gaining 50 pounds over like the next couple of years. But again, just range I'm giving you guys can do whatever you want with this information, but this is just the reality, right? Guys are taking 18 IUs of GH. That's like 1 vial of Serostim per day. So timing, I would recommend, if we're doing it in a growing phase, this is what I do with a lot of my clients in a growing phase context, we take it about 2 hours before bed to enhance the sleep and recovery. Or you could do this, you'd actually split the dose. So you'd have half of it 30 minutes pre-workout and the other half 2 hours before bed. So what the pre-workout dose does is it gives you a really nice fullness and pump before you go to the gym. So you actually get an enhanced gym performance. And then 2 hours before bed to obviously enhance the sleep and the recovery. but it's multifaceted, right? I've done both approaches. This one works down here 100%. Like I'll notice if I take my GH 30 minutes before the gym, like I'll do like one warm up set on like my primary movement, and like I almost can't move because the pump is so bad. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Good thing meaning, yeah, you get a great pump and you're driving nutrients into the bloodstream or nutrients into the muscle, or it can be a bad thing because that pump can actually impede your strength. So again, use it wisely. Um, okay, so let's go over the cutting application. This one's really good because, like I said before, growth hormone has a direct lipolysis effect and can be taken advantage in a cutting context. So when we're using it in this context, we want to use it for lipolysis benefits and to maintain muscle fullness while dieting, because like I said before, growth hormone is going to give you this really nice fullness and pump. It's going to give you really nice nutrient partitioning and just make you full and hard and everything. It's great. So again, dosing about the same as cutting, 4 IUs to 18 IUs every day. Again, that 18 IU, the higher range, can actually be a little bit counterproductive, because if you're very prone to having your blood sugar elevated from the GH, that can actually blunt your fat loss a little bit because of loss of insulin sensitivity. But again, that can be controlled through exogenous insulin use, metformin, retatrutide, all that stuff, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. But anyways, again, same range here, 4 IUs, 18 IUs. So in a fat loss context, it actually works better to split it off a couple times a day. Like I would say at least 3. So the timing would be a split dose 3 times per day. You would take a third before fasted cardio in the morning for the direct lipolysis effect. So when you take the GH and then you move, it like directly like taps into fat cells for energy. A third 30 minutes before the gym for a pre-workout pump and gym performance. So as you diet down and you're on very, very low carbs, you're going to notice your pump start to diminish a little bit, and your strength and gym performance starts to diminish. So taking the growth hormone can help just keep like good muscle fullness while you're training, and just help a little bit with your strength too, and help you just like feel the muscles when you're moving. Because when you're really dieting down and you're lacking pump in the gym, it's hard to feel the muscle being worked, right? When there's no blood in there. So again, they can just help you just connect with the muscle better, keep your strength higher, keep a better pump when you're on low food. And then a third before bed, 2 hours before bed for the recovery and sleep. Okay. So this is a really interesting application right here. And this is actually something I've used personally. I used this for a couple of weeks with Dan when I was working with him. And this really fucking worked. Even within 2 weeks, I noticed an effect. So this is going to be the improvement of a weak body part. So you can take advantage of the growth hormone to improve a lagging muscle group. So what you do is you take a high dose of it. You take anywhere from 10 to 20 IUs. And what you do is you take the full dose directly after training a weak muscle group. And you only take it on weak body part training days. So for example, when I was doing this approach, I was doing this the day, like the minutes after my chest workout. Like I literally bring it in the car and I would keep it cold and I would take it like right after I would train chest. And I would just like fill up the fucking insulin syringe and just pin it. And I noticed a drastic effect. Like within days, like my chest just looked like fuller and more like filled out and catching up with the rest of my body. So yeah, like directly after you train, when it's the most receptive, that's when you want to do it. So HGH application number 4, short duration mega blast. So this is a strategy you can use to break past a major growth plateau just for like a short duration of time. So what you do is you'd mega dose the growth hormone for a short duration. You'd increase your body weight a ton, and you'd add some new muscle cells, and then you just come off the growth hormone. You'd solidify that muscle tissue, and then you'd keep doing that. So you go like 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, or something like that. Just an example. But again, so this is an advanced method, by the way. So if you're a beginner using growth hormone, likely don't do this, because you at least want to know what a moderate dose of growth hormone even does to you in the first place. So don't do this if you're just starting growth hormone. This is after you've used it for a couple of years and you want to experiment with the ways you can use it and the ways it can actually help with your bodybuilding. So this is going to be a high dose mega blast for 4 to 6 weeks, only to break past growth plateaus. So the dosing would be anywhere from 10 to 20 IUs. You do a split dose 2 times a day. Half would be 30 minutes before the training for gym performance and pump, and then the other half would be 2 hours before bed. And you would run a pretty large caloric surplus for this time frame, with potential insulin use as well. That's why I said this is going to be an advanced method. And you'd want to push the body weight up, then return to maintenance to solidify that muscle tissue. Okay. Then the 5th application would just be for physique maintenance or just overall well-being. So, excuse me. Fuck, I'm like choking on my fucking water. So this would be ideal for men 35 plus that want to have better overall well-being, maintain a lean physique, and use overall less AAS. Okay. So a good dose of this would just be 3 to 6 IUs. Super simple, super low. Just really, really working on the back burner to just promote recovery, better overall well-being, and I mean everything. I mean, growth hormone is like, it's almost like the fountain of youth. So for a lot of guys in this age demographic, this can really help with not only sleep and recovery and joint health, but skin quality, hair quality, makes you literally look younger and feel younger. So yeah, like a low dose can do that. Okay. So what we do is you want to time it just 2 hours before bed to just help enhance the recovery and sleep, or any of the previous described timings. So you could do it before fasted cardio. You do it like a split dose, fasted cardio before bed. Really, as long as it gets in you at some point in the day for this, it's not really a big deal. But typically I like to time it about 2 hours before bed, just because for most people it does help with sleep a lot. It really does numbers for that. Okay. So for growth hormone, how much GH do you take and how long do you run it? So this is going to be goal dependent. So like I said, bulking, cutting, it really depends on the length of that specific goal. So for example, for a lot of you guys that are doing diets, your diet might only be 16 weeks. So you might only want to run it for that 16 weeks. You might only want to run a high dose for that phase, like either bulking or cutting, and then just run a relatively low dose when you're cruising, like a maintenance dose, 2 to 3 IUs. So again, it's goal dependent. So as much as you can tolerate, that's how much you want to take. Really, it comes down to that. So again, it's going to be person dependent. I never went above 6 because for me, my biggest issue was water retention and high blood glucose. And it creeped up the more I went up in GH. So I actually didn't like taking 6. I actually felt better on 4 to 5 IUs. So again, if you can tolerate a higher dose and grow really well on that, then by all means you can do it as much as you can afford. So like I said, growth hormone is not cheap. It's, for a kit of pharmacy grade growth hormone, like Serostim, for example, that might run you $600 a month to run only 4 IUs of it. Okay. So, some generics are a little bit less expensive and you can actually afford to run more of them. But again, it's still not like it's not like gear, for example. A vial of testosterone is like $40, $50, and that will last you a long time. But growth hormone is a little bit different. So again, as much as you can afford. And you must run it for long term to get the permanent effective results. So yeah, you can, like I said, you can do these short duration, like mega blasts and stuff, and they are good for breaking past a growth plateau for a short duration. But to get the permanent changes to your physique, like you saw up here, like this is like a night and day fucking difference. To get this effect, it needs to be run for a very, very long time. Like I would say over a year to really solidify that look. So I want to talk about pharma grade GH versus generic GH because a lot of you guys are confused on this. A lot of you guys asked me questions about this, so I want to get into this. So, in my opinion, and a lot of you guys can argue with me on this, I really don't care. I've noticed a distinct difference myself. A lot of guys I work with notice a distinct difference. And it doesn't matter what it says, what your IGF levels say in the fucking lab work. Pharma GH and generic GH are practically different drugs that work very similarly. So, I would say like today, there are some actually really, really good generic brands that are on par with pharmacy brands. And, those are very far and few. I have a select few of them. I'm actually taking a generic brand right now actually it even works better for me than Serostim. Actually holds less water and I'm actually getting the same effect. But there's some garbage generics out there. Like there's some really garbage shit generics where it's like you could take like 20 IUs of it and not even get the same effect as 4 IUs of like Serostim or Genotropin. So pharmacy GH, it's really just going to work better in my opinion. It's made in a real lab setting, like the actual like process of making GH is very hard to be replicated in somebody's fucking bathtub, in somebody's like little underground lab. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so Pharma GH, the brands that you'd want to look for would be Genotropin, Norditropin, Serostim. So these two right here, these are the pharma brands I've taken, Genotropin and Serostim. Never taken Norditropin before. Gintropin, Omnitrope, and Sinatropin. So the pros of this, there's going to be, and just from what I've experienced personally, there's going to be less side effects, so less carpal tunnel and less water retention. There's going to be stronger fat loss benefits, so I actually stay leaner when I take the pharmacy brands. I've noticed you get better pumps, and you basically get more benefit from a lesser dose. So 4 to 6 IUs of pharma can produce massive, massive effects, in my opinion. So cons, it's just way more expensive. It is what it is. Like I said, $500 to $600 a month to run 4 IUs daily of really any of these brands, except maybe Sinatropin. I don't know if you guys remember this. There was a time when Sinatropin was like dirt fucking cheap. Sinatropin is like that's like fuck, what is it? I think it's from like Pakistan or some like Arabic country. I can't remember exactly where it's from. Iranian. It's Iranian growth hormone. My bad. But there's a time where it was like dirt fucking cheap, and people were stocking the fuck up on it. Now I think it's back to the normal prices of these. But yeah, otherwise, it's usually very, not very cost effective to run. So generic GH, the pros of it are just it's less expensive. So it'd probably be like half or if not a quarter of the price. You're more likely to run into carpal tunnel and water retention. It's not as potent, so you need to run a little bit more to get an effect. Like for example, if you run 4 to 6 IUs of pharma grade, you might get the effects of 10 to 20 of an average generic brand. It is what it is. And it just produces like a different look from what I've noticed. There's something distinct about being on pharmacy grade growth hormone that it's like you can't produce the same look as on generics. Okay. And again, this is just purely anecdote, by the way, from myself and the people I've worked with. I could be completely wrong on this. Like you guys can argue with me and actually invite you to, but this is purely just from anecdote and what I've seen with myself and the people I've worked with, by the way. So managing side effects, this is really crucial. So the two that I want to go over are going to be carpal tunnel and water retention, and then high blood glucose. These seem to be like the major ones that we have to take into account. So the carpal tunnel and water retention. So this is going to happen because what GH is doing is it's promoting holding more sodium in the kidneys. So what happens is you're going to hold more sodium in the kidneys because your insulin levels might be a little bit higher because you have a higher blood glucose. These two actually can feed into each other, if that makes sense, because you have higher blood glucose that's going to cause a little bit more insulin secretion, and that insulin secretion is going to hold more electrolytes into the kidneys. Okay, so actually they both feed into each other, like I said. So you're going to hold more sodium in the kidneys, and you have an electrolyte imbalance. So number one, you likely need some extra water intake. So I would say about a fourth or half a gallon more of water is needed when you're taking growth hormone. Potassium supplementation to handle the electrolyte imbalance. And by the way, so the reason you're getting the carpal tunnel, by the way, is like there's water retention on your body, and it's almost like it's compressing some of the nerves like around like that, like fucking give you like feeling in your hands and your wrists and your elbows. So that's likely what's going on. And again, this can be remedied just by proper electrolyte balance. Okay. So potassium supplementation to handle the electrolyte imbalance. You could lower the dose to a manageable range, so taper down by 1 IU until you find your sweet spot dose. So, for example, I was working with one of my clients. He was getting really bad carpal tunnel, and he's a lineman electrician. So he obviously needs his fucking hands to work, and he was getting numb fingers and wrists and everything. It was detrimenting his day to day. So he was taking 5 IUs, and we reduced it to 3, and he was getting the same effect, like in terms of growing muscle, but none of the carpal tunnel, right? So we found a sweet spot dose. And like I said before, like I was talking about above, it's not that bad. So, just deal with it. If you really want to use growth hormone and you're seeing the benefits that it brings, just deal with it. It's not terrible. So high blood glucose, let's talk about that. So it's good practice when you're using GH to use a blood glucose monitor when using an effective dose of GH, like over 6 IUs. If you're taking like something like 3 or 4, you probably don't need to do this, but we're going to get into like bodybuilding dose ranges, like 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 18. Definitely good to check on. So I would say take it in the morning fasted. So like right when you get out of bed, and then postprandial. So 2 hours after your meals, to see how your blood glucose is affected, not only when you wake up, but also, how you're handling the food you're eating and how you're processing the glucose and shuttling the glucose out of the bloodstream. So a good way to mitigate this, if you find you're waking up with higher blood glucose, over, 90, 100 milligrams per deciliter, or in between meals, if it's creeping up into like the 120s, 130s, berberine, 500 milligrams with carb meals to handle blood glucose really, really helps with that. Metformin, if absolutely needed. I'm not going to go too deep into metformin. There's a whole nother topic for another video. But some people will need some metformin when they're taking GH, if they can handle it. Retatrutide. This one I would say is one of the best, in my opinion. I'm taking 2 milligrams of Reta right now, and I just started taking GH again. And I'm not getting any of the blood glucose issues and basically none of the water retention I was getting a year ago when I was taking GH without retatrutide. So really great one right there that can help control it. Then obviously if you're really advanced and you're willing to use some insulin to help with your bodybuilding, this will help with that too, right? They have a synergistic effect. So again, I'm not going to get too far into the insulin. Again, another topic for another video, but it will help with that. And this is why pro bodybuilders take GH and insulin. They don't just take the GH. Okay. So I'll show you some of my clients that's got pretty good results from taking GH. Now, keep in mind, obviously, this was not just from the growth hormone, right? They're taking other stuff too. Okay. They were training hard. They were dieting hard, right? So it wasn't just the growth hormone. But I want to show you guys like some of the physiques that this can produce, or at least the progress it can produce, right? So this is Robbie. He looks fucking insane. He gained like 30 pounds in this course right here. This is John. So John, he pretty much drastically improved his body composition. We actually just started taking GH about 4 weeks ago. So he's making some good progress so far, but basically completely just transformed his physique right here. And then Luke. So Luke is taking 4 IUs right now. Keep in mind, none of these guys are taking any more than 4 IUs. Actually, we just bumped John's up to 6, but none of these guys are taking like crazy astronomical doses, at least not yet. Eventually, maybe down the road if we need to bump them up, but right now they're making good progress on 4. Same thing with Luke too. Okay. So that is the growth hormone guide. This is like a 45-minute long video. So a lot of fucking value here for you guys. And again, I love making these videos because you don't really hear so much of this information on, how to actually use these things. And what I tell you guys, again, like I don't like to go really deep into the science. I'm not going to sit here and act like an all-knowing expert on GH and the side effects and why they happen and everything. A lot of this is purely based off of my own experience and my client's experience, right? Which is at the end of the day is what really matters because, you guys are going to be using these things yourself. So yeah, it's important to know, a lot of the mechanisms of these things. Of course it is, right? And transparently, I do a lot of research myself to learn these things, so I can help you guys. But to keep it simple, it's like, if I was to go into that for hours, that would just fucking confuse you guys at the end of the day. Same thing with the Reddit guide, same thing with a lot of the other guides I made. I just keep it super simple. So you see, I just have full clarity on how to use it, and there's no confusion, no issues. So again, hopefully this helps you guys learn how to apply growth hormone into your cycle, and you can start making some serious bodybuilding results. And start really breaking past that growth plateau for you guys. A lot of you guys are, like I said, you've reached a point in your muscle growth where it's plateaued. The steroids you're taking are no longer really giving you major progress cycle to cycle. It seems to be a little bit slower. So growth hormone can really just help bring things together here. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. I will be making more of these guides soon. I have one coming out. It's going to be an oral steroid guide. And I have another one coming out soon. It's going to be going into a little bit more of the peptide side of things. A lot of you guys are asking me questions about that too. So I got a lot more of these in the making. So look forward to that. Otherwise, that's all I got for you. And hope this helps. And I will see you guys soon.